Everyone. I see we have about 68 people in and it's 3 o'clock, so I'm gonna start in about a minute. I recognize some of you guys from yesterday, so welcome back. Please introduce yourself again in the chat and tell me where you're from. That was so exciting yesterday for me to see all the different places that you guys were joining us from. So keep the messages coming. All right, so today we're gonna do a full, first of all, I hope English was good today for everybody. I know it was, the majority of it was all repeats, so that should have been great. I hope what we did yesterday helped you a bit, and I look forward to all ones from everybody. I gave my email yesterday, so when you get results, please be sure to message me, let me know how you did, because I'll be really happy to find out. So that is tomorrow. This is my absolute favorite subject. I hope you guys like it as well. I know some of you are thrilled that you don't have to do a paper too, but that makes me very sad. For 2 years, you've been preparing to write these essays. You've studied all your poems, your drama, your prose, and now all you have to do is a multiple choice. However, all that work you did for 2 years, that is exactly what they're testing on the multiple choice. Now, unfortunately, a lot of students don't do well in literature paper 1, and the reason for that is you approach the exam just like you would English paper 1. Now, English paper 1 is a comprehension exam, right? They're just testing it to see that you understand. You understand standard English, you understand some figures of speech, you could read different types of material and understand. English B paper 1 is very different from that. English B paper 1 is testing that all the things you learned when you were doing your poems, when you were doing your Shakespeare, your Tijan, whether you did Bret Eye's Memory or Mockingbird, that the skills you learn, the analysis you learn from doing that, you can apply it to pieces that you have not seen. So your entire way of thinking, your entire way of approaching this exam has to be different from the way you approach your English A exam. So today I will go through January 2020 paper in its entirety. I picked that one, first of all, because I've done most of the rest of it with my students already. And two, because it was only one of the sections was repeated, the very first one, and the rest of it was new. So I am hoping they repeat some of it. And it was also particularly tricky. Quite a few of the questions were a little bit tricky. So I thought it'd be a good one for us to go through today. Even if you've already done this paper, I beg you to just pay close attention to my technique and my tips. The steps that I give you to use and the way that I'm asking you is a way that I've found is proven to work. Of course, if you have another way of doing it, you know, more power to you, and you just kind of want to see the answers for this paper in case it repeats, that's fine too. But I would jot down the steps, I would practice it and try it in the exam, right? While I'm going through the paper, if you have any questions, just put it in the chat at different intervals. I'll pause and check to see. And yeah, I hope we can get through all of it in 2 hours, and I hope I don't make any mistakes. Let me apologize in advance if I do that. This is only my second time doing this, so I am a little bit nervous. All right. So I hope everyone can see the paper. This is the one that we're doing, right? Now this question, this first question here, Paul Roy and Moses, this has repeated, I think, if not 4, at least 3 times. We could hope they bring it again, but if not, it's a nice one to practice with. So just to tell you, the exam will have the exact same format always. You will have 2 pieces of drama, typically 1 West Indian, 1 non-West Indian. Then you will have 2 poems and then 2 pieces of prose. The length of each of these tend to vary every year. Sometimes you have very long pieces of drama and everything else is short. Sometimes you have very long poems. You never know which combination they're going to give, right? But as in all your multiple choice, as I'm sure you've noticed, you have enough time, right? So let's get into it. Now, the first step always will be to read your instructions, right? The instructions to this are very simple. Read the following extra carefully, then answer items 1 to 10. That's step 1, read your instructions. Step 2, you're going to read any information that they give you about the piece. So let's just check all the way to the bottom, which is where they usually tell you. So adapted from Samuel Salvon, a very well-known and talented West Indian writer, Eldorado West 1. So this book was written, well, we see at least it was published in 1998. So your setting is going to be a little bit dated. You know it's West Indian, you know, this Eldorado West 1 doesn't give you much information, but sometimes, as I said, they will give you more information here that could kind of tell you what it's going to be about. They also have these little bits here sometimes you have 2 items and they would correspond to something up here that they're defining for you. So don't forget to read them if you come across a word that you don't know with a number next to it. So that's step 1 and 2, read your instructions. Step 2, you're reading the information on it. Step 3 is going to be go through your questions. Now, for those of you who weren't with me yesterday, let me remind you, whatever you used to do before, as I said, if it works for you, no problem. But that format of reading the passage or the piece 2 times and then going to the questions, I find it to be time consuming and not effective, and it kind of leads to you getting lost. Sometimes you're bored, you're sleepy, you just kind of zone out and you have to keep reading it over and over. This method is to prevent that from happening. You're going to do what we call active reading, right? You're going to use your pencil, you're going to make notations. Now, before we even get into the piece, you're going to look at the questions. Doing that is going to help your mind to know what to focus on, what you're looking for, that type of thing. And your notations will help you to stay focused. So after you read your little blurb here, you go to number 1. The setting is most likely. So we know we have to pay attention to setting. I would even underline that word just to stay active and to signal to your brain that you need to know what is happening with setting. 2, Moses' description of Tolroy's dwelling as a 2x4 in line 9 indicates to the audience that it is a. So this is the part that we have to look at. Now the step I would want you to take at this point is to go up to line 9, which is here when he says 2x4, and you're writing question 2 next to it. So when you're doing when you're reading it through, you know exactly what you have to look for. You don't have to go hunting for it, and you know you could even answer that question right away after you read that line. Now keep in mind, you have the questions 1 and 2 next to each other on this page. However, when you go to the next page, it's going to go down 3, 4, like this, and then come up in another column. Please, for that reason, when you are putting your answers on your answer sheet, as soon as you answer the question, put it in immediately and use your finger to point at the number of the question and then point again on your answer sheet. If you don't do that, there's always a chance that you're going to slip up and put your answer in the wrong place. Please be careful about that. Number 3, the best explanation of the dramatic effect of the loudspeaker mentioned in the second stage direction is that. So again, you have a stage direction, lines 20 to 21, you go up to 20 to 21, you put number 3 next to it, and I would write the words dramatic effect. Now this is something that you did over and over when you were studying for the literature paper 2, and it is the most common question in these exams, right? That's really what they want to know. And dramatic effect is a very simple thing. All they're asking is, now this is a play, so everything that you answer, you're going to assume that the play is being performed on a stage and you have a live audience. The dramatic effect is, what is the effect of this, whatever here. So here we have the loudspeaker on the audience, right? Don't let it confuse you. They might ask dramatic significance or they might ask dramatic effect. It means the same thing. What does it do for the audience? Why did the playwright put this in? What did he want from the audience? Right, that's what you're asking yourself, and you know that you're looking for that for the stage direction in lines 20 to 21. Which of the following lines mostly contributes to humor? So we're gonna know that only when we read it. Number 5, the expression waiting like a hawk for tenants. So again, you're gonna find this phrase up in the passage and you're going to put number 5 next to it, underline it, and write effectiveness next to it. Because again, here they're asking about effectiveness, right? Now, a little tip for questions like these whenever they ask about the effectiveness, they would have a different word at the beginning of each sentence that is usually a clue to the answer. So we have to highlight, to point out, to emphasize, and to reinforce. Number 6, which of the following are used to indicate that the extract portrays a Caribbean experience? So this seems to be a general question that you would be able to answer at the end of it, right? Because it refers to the whole extract. The important part here is Caribbean experience. And then you have one of the major themes. Now, when you were doing your pieces for paper 2, you would have learned about so many different themes, right? So that theme is that underlying lesson or story or thing that they're thinking about as they go through, and it would come across in the piece in its entirety. So you would pick from these based on something that you felt the entire piece was trying to address. Moses' response to the reporter suggests that he, so this is a detail, response to the reporter, I would highlight it so my mind knows, underline, sorry, because in the exam you'll just have your pencil. My mind knows to pay attention to this moment, right? His response to the reporter. Tora's reaction to his family's arrival. Again, Tora's reaction and family's arrival. Good. So, one more. How do the stage direction? So we have 2 questions about stage direction. The first one, I think that was question 2 or 1, and then you have this one, right? In lines 42 to 44. So I would go up to these lines here, and next to the stage direction, write number 10 and underline chuckling and in consternation. Function as an effective guide to the action on the stage. So when I'm doing this question, I'll talk a little bit more about stage directions. So this was your step 3, right? So I'll always remind you, step 1, read the instructions. Step 2, read the information about the piece. Step 3, go through the questions, making notations, which is what we just did. And now I know, before I've read it, what I'm looking for. You know, you have Moses, you have Torah, you have a reporter. Your brain has already kind of gotten all these little cues. So there's no way in reading this 2-page thing that you could get lost, right? And of course, you would have a lot of notations on your page by the time you finish going through the questions. So then we go to the passage. So it starts off with stage directions. Now, you know, those of you who did Tijan for your play, you would be very familiar with stage directions. Those of you who did Shakespeare only, Tempest, you wouldn't be as familiar because Shakespeare rarely uses stage directions. But stage direction is the playwright's way of telling the actor. So remember, you know, you write a play, actors anywhere, anytime in the future, in the world, could perform this play and you won't be there. The playwright won't be there to say, I want you to stand here, I want you to decorate the stage in this way, I want you to do this. Therefore, the playwright writes all these stage directions for the actors. So you have to remember, this is a form of literature that we are reading, but it's not meant to be read. It's meant to be performed and to be seen on a stage. So these stage directions are meant for the actors. Because we are reading it, to us, it kind of sets the mood, it gives a setting, it tells us what is happening. So we could assume from these stage directions that on the stage you would have, so it says here, Moses is in Waterloo Station, London. So we have setting, right? He's in Waterloo Station, London. There is a confused milling mob of West Indians. So again, that tells us that on the stage there would be like a crowd. They would make a crowd of people all together. The milling mob gives the idea that they kind of all push up on each other, maybe even talking loudly. They're all there. They are West Indian. And now they're sure to point out West Indian because it's a crowd of West Indians at a London station, right? So it tells you that whatever is happening here is relevant to the West Indian community. Waiting for the boat train. Moses is sitting on a bench when a Jamaican friend, Tolroy, comes up. So the stage direction also introduces our main characters to us. You have Moses and you have Tolroy, and we learn the relationship between them, that they are friends and that they are Jamaican. Now he says a Jamaican friend. So we know that Tolroy is Jamaican. We are not sure whether Moses is or not. But from this that stage direction, we already have so much information to prepare us to understand the piece. So Tolroy says, hey Moses, I didn't expect to meet you in Waterloo for arrivals. Moses, the next time will be my departure, please God. The boat train late. Tolroy, who are you meeting? Moses, some fella named Henry. Tolroy, boy, I expected my mother. So just to pause there, Moses is waiting for a friend, right? So some fella named Henry. Tolroy is waiting for his mother. All you fellas really have guts. Yes, Tolroy, where are you going to put she? In that 2x4 you have in Harrow Road? Now, this 2x4, I think most of us in the Caribbean are very familiar with this phrase, right? You kind of use 2x4 to define a small space. It doesn't mean nothing, you know, is like what in some countries you call shanties, sometimes we call it slums, you call it all these different words, but what they're trying to describe is a very small place, right? And I believe that's one of the questions. Tolroy, I have to look for a bigger place. You know any? Moses, look, one of your Jamaican countrymen over there waiting like a hawk for tenants. He have a lot of houses in Brixton. Now, when he says your Jamaican countrymen, that answers my question from before. Moses is not Jamaican, Tolroy is, right? And he says here that this guy is waiting like a hawk, right? And that's one of the questions. You would have had that notation here already. Waiting like a hawk, let's underline the whole thing. For tenants. Right? And he have a lot of houses in Brixton. So there's certainly a Jamaican man living in London who is renting to tip to West Indians who have just come. You know what they set up like, a chair, a table, and he hitting you anything from 3 to 5 guineas. Moses, so he's kind of trying to say that you get the bare minimum and this is how much you have to pay. I have no idea what 3 to 5, how much money 3 to 5 guineas is or what it was in 1998, but I'm assuming it's the bare minimum. Moses, you try down by Ladbroke, since they kill Kelso, English people have been evacuating like Dunkirk from that area. You're bound to get a room. So they're talking about another area where I guess both English and West Indian people used to live. However, there was a murder and the English people are leaving the place, right? So he's suggesting there's somewhere that he could live. Tolroy, down there to Brim. What you want? Belgravia, Park Lane? Maybe you could put you up at the Dorchester till you find a place. So you see the little notations here, they 1 for Park Lane and 2 for Dorchester. Let's just check it. Affluent neighborhoods and a luxurious hotel in London, right? So Moses definitely, I don't want to say making fun, but you know, he really kind of telling them you're ridiculous. So I mean, there to Grim, we'll go put them up in these nice places, right? This is typical West Indian type of talk. Moses, the same. So we have another piece. You see how the stage directions come in italics to differentiate from the rest of the dialogue, right? So it says here, the station loudspeaker announces the arrival of the boat train. An English reporter comes up to them. So on the stage, of course, you'd have somebody announcing that the train has arrived, which to the audience, to us, it would tell you something is about to happen. The train is here now, you know, what you're waiting for. So a change is going to take place definitely. And then we have an English reporter comes up to them. So another character is introduced on the stage, reporter. And it says here in English, right? Now, I mean, they were talking English the whole time, but not standard English, right? So we have English here. Excuse me, sir, have you just arrived from Jamaica? Moses, yes. I'm from the Echo. Echo would be the name of the newspaper. Would you like to tell me what conditions are like? Tolroy, enjoying this. So the stage direction tells us here that Tolroy is enjoying the station. The situation. Now, we would know that if he's on the stage because he would probably be smiling, chuckling, laughing, right? But the stage direction tells us that Tolroy must show that he is enjoying the situation visibly. Yes, Moses, go and tell him. Well, the situation is desperate as usual. You know that big hurricane it had a few weeks ago? Reporter, yes. Well, I was in that hurricane. You can ask my friend here if you think I lie. I was sitting down in my mansion when suddenly I look up and see the sky. What do you think happened? Reporter, what? Hurricane blow the roof clean off. Banana plantation lay down as if they're going to sleep. So Moses definitely pulling this reporter leg, right? Because he's making this big dramatic thing. And we don't even know if he was in Jamaica when he had a hurricane because he talks like he's been in London for a while, right? But the reporter, of course, is all the attention. Yes, what's listening to him, right? Reporter, tell me, sir, why are so many Jamaicans coming to England? Do you believe the streets are paved with gold? The reporter asking this dotish question, right? If you believe London streets paved with gold. And this is a typical kind of mindset that some people have, and definitely way back in the day when a lot of West Indians would have migrated to England, that, you know, we come in from this swinging on trees in the country here, and you're going to go to England and you believe stupidness like, you know, the streets are paved with gold. Moses, I don't know about all of them, but sometimes in the night I see as if the Bay Wester Road sparkling with diamonds. But then you look in truth, you see it's only stones and gravel that mix up with the asphalt. You know of any London streets that paved with gold? So Moses is definitely making an ass of this reporter, right? Of course, we don't know if the reporter is even going to understand his jokes and what he's saying and that he is pretending. So the reporter says, thank you for that statement. So he doesn't really, you know, go into it. I'll just talk to a few others. Moses, chuckling, watch him. Like you're going to tackle that family that coming off the train. So Moses is making fun of the reporter. Clearly, the stage direction helps us to see that he's laughing at what he said. Tolroy in consternation. So consternation, of course, means that kind of you're worried, you're anxious, you don't know what's going to happen, you are not pleased, right? It's a negative feeling. That looked like my mother. It also has a bit of anticipation in it, right? Because he's waiting for his mom. And he sees his mom come off the boat and he says, the boat train, that looked like my mother. And Tanti and Agnes and Louis and the two children, Ma, look me over here. As he gets near them, panting, so he runs up to them. We know that because the stage direction tells us that he's panting. What is this all? So we know already, without even continuing, that Tolroy was only expecting his mother and Tanti and she cousin and she Sharon and all these people show up, right? Ma, Tolroy, boy, you don't remember your own mother? Tolroy in a daze. Poor fella, right? You're real confused. But what Tanti doing here, man? Agnes and Louis and the children. So they leave us at the end there with that, and we can only imagine Tolroy's stress at this point, right? Because remember, the whole conversation in the beginning was he didn't even have room for the mother, and now all these people show up. So the mood and the tone of the whole thing kind of changed in the end here, because now they were joking, they were laughing with the reporter, but now this is a kind of serious situation for Tolroy especially. So now you're going to go into the questions. Now, let me remind you, in this step 4, you could read the piece and answer at the same time, because as I said, you would have had notation. So for instance, the only reason I didn't do this, because I don't want to get confusing going, scrolling up and down, right? But you could do it while you're doing the exam. You could have answered number 1, as soon as you know what the setting was in that first couple lines. You could have answered number 2 when we read that part about 2x4. This method will take you less time and reduce the chance of you, 1, getting lost and having to keep reading things over, and 2, getting it wrong. Your other option, if you don't like doing that, is to read the whole thing like I just did and now come to do the questions. The hope is, because you've already read the questions and there were notations when you were reading the piece, when you come to do the questions now, you don't have to keep looking back. You could just go through them, right? So number 1, the setting is most likely you have an airport, a train station, an old boat train, and a house in London. So don't get tied up and think an old boat train, because they said the word boat train, they're actually at the station, right? So a train station. So 1B. 2, Moses' description of Torah's dwelling as 2x4 indicates to the audience that it is a. So wooden structure, they try to mess you up there because a lot of people know there's an actual type of piece of wood that is called a 2x4. Tenement dwelling. Tenement is a common phrase used to describe dwellings in rural communities in Jamaica. Again, they're trying to tie you up. Squatter settlement, and then a small confined space. From reading it, we know that the only reason they describe it as a 2x4 is to indicate that it is a small confined space, right? So the answer is D. Number 2, D. Number 3, the best explanation of the dramatic effect of the loudspeaker mentioned in stage direction is that so remember the loudspeaker came on and it announced the train was coming in. So let's check the answers. Increases the feeling of expectancy. It does do that. Encourages the characters to be quiet. No. Announces the arrivals and departures. Yes. Reinforces the hustle and bustle of the setting. I don't think it does any of these things for the audience more than it does this. It just announces that the boat train has arrived, right? So that's C for number 3. Number 4, so remember what I told you, right? When you come on this page, you're not going to go across like you did just now. It's not going to be 3 and then 4 here. It's going to go down. 4, which of the following lines mostly contributes to humor in the extract? So there were definitely some funny pieces, especially when he was making fun with the reporter. So let's see what they have. The next time will be my departure. Please, now before I even go into this, most of the times when I do this, students be like, well, I didn't really find that funny. Remember, it's not if you find it funny or not, it's if the author intended to be funny, right? The next time will be my departure, please God. That's not 1, so you could cross out A. A chair, a table, and he hitting you anything from 3 to 5 guineas. That was kind of a serious situation with these small rooms and all that, and how much somebody's charging rent, so that wasn't funny. What you want, Belgravia, Park Lane, maybe you could put you up at the Dorchester. That part was funny, right? Because he was saying, well, they want to put her in some fancy hotel or something. So C is the best answer so far. And then they have, do you believe the streets are paved with gold? Now, I want you to be careful with this. The line that they're quoting here is not when Moses was actually being funny and saying about the gold and diamond in the road and all that crap. It's when the reporter asked the question. When the reporter asked the question, it wasn't funny at all. It was serious, right? So your answer is actually C. 4, right? 5, the expression waiting like a hawk for tenants is most effective in highlighting the fear of the immigrants, pointing out the birds that flock. So this is A, not so much, right? Because it's not addressing the immigrants, it's addressing the guy who's waiting for the tenants. B is too literal, so you're going to take that off. Emphasizing birds of prey, again, too literal, it has nothing to do with birds. And D, reinforcing the exploitive nature of the business. D is your answer, right? Because waiting like a hawk, usually, you know, you're watching them so hard, trying to exploit how they have just arrived and they're going to be looking for somewhere to live. So your answer for 5 is D. 6, which of the following are used to indicate that the extract portrays a Caribbean experience? So you have language and diction, that's true. So remember we learned yesterday, diction is word choice, right? And language would be the way that they're speaking. Dress and names of places, that this B, they didn't describe how they were dressed really. Tone and the reference to a hurricane, no. Reference to banana plantation and gold. So it's none of these, your answer is A, language and diction. 7, one of the major themes in this extract is traveling by air and sea, no. Despair and hopelessness, no. Migration and exploitation, yes. Dependent countries versus independent countries, definitely not D. So C is your answer, right? That is the underlying theme because it's addressing migration of West Indians to England, right? And the exploitation of them by people who are especially given, renting out rooms to them. Then 8, Moses' response to reporter suggests that he is ignorant, is being sarcastic, misunderstood the question asked, fears the reporter might embarrass him. It's definitely B, right? He is being sarcastic, he's being funny, he is making fun of the reporter by asking these questions. And some clues to that is his stage direction, right? We know he was enjoying himself. 9, Tolroy's reaction to his family's arrival is best described as shock and relief, joyfulness and longing, anxiety and anticipation, amazement and confusion. So I think you definitely want to go with C. Right? He was anxious, he was nervous, he was also anticipating waiting for his mom. And the part where they said his consternation, he was pacing, panting after running up and down, all of that really helped to tell us what he was feeling. How do the stage directions in line 42 and 44, chuckling in consternation, function as an effective guide to the action on the stage? So remember they were chuckling when they were making fun of the reporter when the reporter walked off. And then the in consternation part comes when the boat has arrived and Tolroy sees his mother. So you have here, they present an indifferent emotional response. So definitely not indifference. Consternation is a very strong emotion. It's not indifference. They shift the mood from carefree to anticipation. Now that seems very much the answer, right? Let's just check the other two. They heighten the suspense about Tolroy's family. They prove it. Now, the consternation part does heighten the suspense, but the chuckling doesn't. So C can't be an answer. They provide a sense of the local community in London. That have nothing to do with anything, right? So your answer is B. They shift the mood from carefree to anticipation. So for those of you who have not done one of these before, which I'm hoping is none of you, you see that the questions is very different from comprehension. It's very much the literary analysis and techniques and looking at that deeper meaning that you learned to do in literature. And there's always an answer there that has some kind of obvious comprehension response. Don't get caught up in those answers, right? There's always something. You see something like this, shift the mood from carefree to anticipation. That is a different level of analysis. That's what they're looking for. Let me just check the chat to see if anybody has any questions before we move to the next one. Somebody asked what's the answer for number 6 was A. Oh yeah, thanks guys. And 9 was C. All right, guys, so we're going to go on to the other one. Now, as I said, Torah and Moses, this piece has repeated many times. We can hope it comes again. But if not, you learn your skills. So we're going to try it again. So step 1. So like I said, you'll have 2, right? Back to back, 2 prose. Read the instructions. Read the following extract carefully, then answer items 11 to 20. Simple enough. Then read any information on the piece. The title we have here is Miss Civilization. That tells me nothing. Except maybe we have a female character as our main character. Then you go into the bottom. Adapted from Richard Harding Davis, Miss Civilization. Review from, so it doesn't tell us what year or the setting, but it has the same, it's an excerpt from this piece. Step 3, Go through your questions. What is happening in lines 1 to 7 the day of Alice of the extract? So you're going to go up to lines 1 to 7, write number 11 next to it, and even write what is happening and put a question mark. So when you read it, you'll know what to look for. 12, and you can answer it right away. 12, the statement, the burglars will be here. I'll see to that. All you have to do is get here. In line 19, gives the audience the impression that Alice is. So again, you go up to line 19, find this line, right, and underline it. And put number 12 next to it. 13, which of the following is an example of irony in the extract? So I'm hoping you guys know what irony is, sarcasm. These are terms we will be using. And also, regardless of what happens today and what you already know, you will review all your literary devices tonight. When we're doing the questions, I'll talk a little bit more about irony. 14, the best explanation of the dramatic significance, right? So dramatic significance, again, if Reddy's falling, so falling, and his insistence on eating before leaving the house is 2. So as you see, any dramatic significance will give these words, right? Suggest, highlight, emphasize, imply. In which of the following statements does the playwright heighten the tension in the extract? So we're looking at humor, we're looking for humor this time, we're looking for heightening the tension for the audience. 16, how does light function as contrast in the extract? So this is something my brain now knows I have to look for if they're talking about light. Line 48 to 61, I don't mean to let the gentleman help me, suggest that Alice's attitude towards the burglar seems to be. So you go up to line 48 to 61, underline this part, write number 70 next to it, and put the question attitude and put a question mark, right? 18, the tone of the extract. So this is one after reading all of it, you'll be able to understand. Can best be described as, which of the following is the most plausible ending of the incident in the extract? So this gives a suggestion of what could happen after. So again, in the end, you will be able to answer this easily. Which of the following is an appropriate theme for the extract? So theme we would look into, right? So they give you 3 nice questions in the end that require you to understand the piece as a whole. So now that you have an idea of what we're looking for and you've made notations on your extract, we will go up and go through. So like I said, you would have notations here. You could answer as you go along. That's the way that I recommend. Or you do what I'm doing right now, which is read the entire thing and then go answer the questions with the hope that you don't need to look back. The day after Christmas, so stage directions first. The day after Christmas, midnight, one hears the noise of a file scraping on iron. Alice enters carrying a candle, listens intently and goes to the telephone. She speaks in a whisper. So it's the day after Christmas, what most of all call Boxing Day, right? Midnight. She hears a noise of a file scraping on iron. At first that seems a little confusing to me, but as I continue, it will make sense, right? So it's almost like a file that somebody's using to cut through iron, right? This is what she hears. Alice enters, so here we have our character here. Alice enters carrying a candle. Now the fact that she's carrying a candle and they have this using a file to break into the house gives the impression that the setting here would be a different time period, not right now. Listens intently and goes to the telephone. She speaks in a whisper. So already whispering at the beginning of this already set up an atmosphere, a mood, a bit of anticipation, suspense, right? That whispering. Alice. Hello, Central. Impatiently, so we know that she is impatient in her tone of voice. Wake up. Again, this is adding to the suspense, the urgency of the situation, right? Give me the sergeant. Quick. What? I can't speak louder. Hurry. Oh, wait, so I should be whispering. Sorry. I can't speak louder. Hurry. Please hurry. The sound of the file grows louder. Hello, are you the sergeant? I am Miss Gardner. There are 3 men trying to break in. Yes, burglars. My mother is very ill. If they frighten her, the shock might be very serious. So already here, something is a bit odd, right? So there are burglars breaking in. That was the sound we heard. They're scraping, trying to cut through the burglar proof, right? She also tells us her mother is ill and she is afraid that the shock of the burglars breaking into the house will scare her mother to death, right? That's the impression we get from what Alice is whispering here to the police. Central is the police. Voice. So this is just a voice on the other line, right? Calling, oh no, this voice actually could be the mother. Calling from the 2nd story. Alice. So when they say calling from the 2nd story, we would assume that on the stage, you would hear the mother's voice or hear this person's voice, but not see them, right? this person would be off stage. Now, guys, if you notice, all of my analysis, all the things that I'm saying to you, it's very literary, right? It's literature analysis. It's not the way you would go through a comprehension. And the same things that I'm saying to you is what you have to be saying in your mind and going through and understanding and sorting out when you're doing it, right? So pay attention to the way that I am analyzing it. So then we have Alice with dismay, mother at the telephone, hold the wire, don't go away. Runs the curtains and look up as though speaking to someone at the top of the stairs. Mother, why aren't you in bed? Voice, is anything wrong, Alice? No, dear, no. I just came down to get a book. I forgot. Please go back, dearest. Voice, I heard you moving about. I thought you might be ill. So you have this typical kind of nosy old lady asking the daughter, you know, what are you doing up waking right now? You want something, you're sick, something wrong, that kind of thing. And the daughter is like, no, 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 just go and sleep, right? She doesn't want the mother to worry or be concerned or be shocked that these people are breaking in. No, dearest, but you'll be very ill if you don't keep in bed. Please, mother, at once. It's all right. So this capitalization here, this you'll, we would assume she emphasized on it when she said it, kind of increased the tension a bit in the whole thing, right? Because she really, really worried that something will happen to the mother if she doesn't stay in bed and out of the way. Voice, yes, dear, good night. Alice, good night, mother. Returns quickly to the telephone. Hello, wait at the foot of our lawn. And when you have the house surrounded, blow 3 whistles so I'll know you're here. The burglars will be here. I'll see to that. All you have to do is get here. So Miss Alice is very confident in herself, giving the police instructions, telling them, you just come, wait outside, blow your whistle, and I will make sure that the thieves are here. The file is now drawn harshly and a piece of wood snaps. Alice blows out the candle and exits. So this piece of wood snaps here is, they mean the getting, right? They break through whatever they were trying to break through. Alice blows out the candle and exits. The window is raised and the ray of a dark lantern is swept about the room. Hatch, so this is one of our characters, one of our burglars outside, puts one leg inside. A pane of glass falls from the window and breaks on the sill. Hatch, speaking over his shoulder, hush, be careful, can't you? He enters. He is followed by Harry. So we have 2 of them now, Hatch and Harry. It's all right. Come on, hurry up and close those shutters. Harry to Reddy outside. So those are our 3 burglars, right? Harry, Hatch, and Reddy. Give me the bag, Reddy. Reddy appears at the window. To Harry, he passes a half-filled canvas bag. On his shoulder, he carries another. On entering, he slips and falls forward on the floor. So these seem a kind of comical group of burglars and real old-timey burglars with a canvas bag filled of goodies, whatever they stole. I'm assuming they're going to different houses, right? Because they came here with a half-filled bag. And this one fall down already, right? So it's kind of comical. Harry, hush, you fool. Has he broken anything? Has he smashed that silver? Harry feeling the bag. It feels all right. Hatch cautiously exits into the hall. Reddy lifts bag. We got enough stuff in this bag already without wasting time on another house. Wasting time's money in this house. Look at this silver. That's the beauty of working the night after Christmas. Everybody's presence is lying about loose and everybody's too tired celebrating to wake up. Lift silver loving cup. Look at that cup. Pick up that bag, Reddy. We can go now. So what they're saying is they're going from house to house, as we know. One of them is saying, Reddy, the one who fell down, like, you know, we don't need to rob another house. We have enough things already. Harry is saying, you know, this is a real good time to rob people after Christmas because you just get all your new shiny stuff and you leave it out, right? The day after Christmas. Hatch, pick up that bag, Reddy. We can go now. Go, not till I've got something to eat. No, you don't. You can't wait till later for something to eat. You can wait till later for something to eat. Reddy, yes, I can wait till later for something to eat, but I can wait better if I eat now. So this is a real jokey kind of thief, right? Because he looking for something to eat in people's house. Exit now, exit into pantry. Say, fellas, look at this layout. I found cold birds and ham and all kinds of pie and real wine. Place this tray on right end of table. Sit down and make yourselves at home. Alice appears. She carries the candle and holds her forefinger warningly to her lips. So this stage direction where Alice appears now, she has confronted the thieves. This should be quite a confrontation. Alice whispering, hush, don't make a noise, please. Please don't make a noise. Hatch in a threatening whisper, don't you make a noise, right? So the last thing these burglars expected is for the homeowner to come out and tell them to be quiet while they're thieving, right? But of course, we know she's worried about her mother. So Hatch tells her, don't you make a noise. I don't mean to. My mother is asleep upstairs and she's very ill and I don't want to wake her and I don't want you to wake her either. Hatch angrily, who else is in this house? No one but mother and the maid servants and they're asleep. You woke me and I hoped you'd go without disturbing mother. But when you started making noise, I decided I'd better come down and ask you to be quiet. As she moves about, Reddy keeps her well in the light of the lantern. I'm afraid you've a very poor supper. I can't see what you, would you mind taking that light out of my eyes and pointing it at the tray? So this here, a real unusual conversation between the homeowner and the thief, right? Hatch sharply, don't you do it. Keep the gun on her. Alice, oh, I don't mind his pointing the gun at me as long as he does not point that light at me. Sternly, turn it down there, please. Ready, let's light fall on tray. To Harry, excuse me, but aren't you getting tired holding that big pistol? Don't you think you might put it down now and help me serve this supper? Harry does not move, no? Well then, let the gentleman help me. So, Alice has decided and is executing her plan perfectly, right? Because remember, she told the police, just show up and she will have the burglars there. Instead of the burglars getting scared, right, of getting caught and just running out the place and the police never being able to catch them, she is going to serve them supper. And they, I guess, are too shocked to realize what is going on, right? They have no idea. She's already called the police and she's just tricking them into waiting until the police get here. So this definitely was aimed at humor. Number 11, what is happening in lines 1 to 7 the day that Alice? So you remember the beginning, as I said, you could have answered this already. The burglars have awakened Alice's mother and she's upset. No. The sergeant is scraping a file. No, the sergeant is not scraping any file. The sergeant tells Alice to come to the station house. He doesn't. Someone is trying to break into the house and Alice calls the sergeant, right? So D is your answer for 11. 12, the statement, the burglars will be here. I'll see to that. All you have to do is to get here. Gives the audience that the impression that Alice is smart and confident. Yes, I think so. Let's just check the rest. Foolish and devious, no. Forgiving and resilient, no. Displeased and frustrated, no. Right? So she's smart and confident. E. 13, which of the following is an example of irony in the extract? Now, irony, of course, is when you expect something to go a certain way, to be a certain way, or somebody to say something, and they do the exact opposite for effect, dramatic effect, typically in literature, right? Alice is very cautious with the intruders instead of being afraid or angry. That is not really ironic. The intruders have gotten enough items from the house and are ready to move to another. No. The intruders are settled in the dining room and are ready for the evening meal. Odd, but not clear, really irony. Alice is more concerned with the intruders waking her mother than they're leaving her house. That's it, right? That is what is strange and opposite almost. So 14, the best explanation of the dramatic significance of Reddy's falling and his insistence on eating before leaving the house is to, right? So here we have dramatic significance. Why did the author of the play, the playwright, make him fall and make him want to eat? Suggest that he's not a skillful burglar, that sounds right. Highlight that he is an intelligent person, no. Emphasize his determination, no. Imply that having his dinner is more important than robbing the house, no. So this is an example of what I was saying about literal comprehension meanings and the deeper meaning. This last answer here implied that having his dinner is more important than robbing the house. That could be the answer, right? Because that, I mean, clearly that's what you see. He wanted to eat. He didn't want to rob the house. He said both of those things are true. However, what the writer's intention, the dramatic significance, the effect the playwright wanted on us is that we know that he is not a skillful burglar, right? And that is what trips up people in this exam. You choose the more obvious answer that is certainly correct and you can find evidence for it, but you don't pay attention to dramatic significance and literary analysis. Right? So what they wanted for the audience is to suggest to us that he is not a skillful burglar. So your answer for 14 is E. 15, in which of the following statements does the playwright heighten the tension in the extract? No, dearest, but you will be very ill. So I remember when I read this, I said it did heighten the tension, right? That's for number 15. Let's just check the others to make sure none of them are the answer. We got enough stuff in this bag already without wasting time in another house. That's not really tense. Say, fellas, look at this layout. I found cold birds, right? So when they find the food, that wasn't tense. Excuse me, but aren't you getting tired of holding that big pistol? Don't you think you might put it down and help me serve the supper? This kind of release some of the tension, right? Change the scene to a more calm one, this part here. So A is the answer. You will be very ill, right? This whole increase the tension by the indication that the mother could really get sick and die if she come down and see these burglars, get shocked and die. 16, how does light function as contrast in the extract? So remember, they had the lanterns, she had the candle in the beginning. Light definitely played a role in this play, right? It was definitely a technique. It highlights the way for Alice to see the intruders, but it masks her true intentions from them. That is correct. Let's check the rest. It illuminates the house, but it obscures the intruders' view of the valuable items. That's not true because they saw what they wanted to steal, right? Its sole purpose is to provide light for the characters to move around in the dark house. That has nothing to do with contrast. It emphasizes the well-lit nature of the house, so the candle was just a decoration. That's way off, right? So your answer in terms of functioning as contrast is A. It highlights the way for Alice to see the intruders because she has whatever light right in front of her, but it masks her true intentions from them, right? So they don't get to see the full picture. So 16 is A. 17, line 48 to 61. I don't mean to let the gentleman help me. Suggest that Alice's attitude toward the burglars seemed to be envious, desolate, and vengeful. Definitely not. Undaunted, fearless, and respectful. Yes. Ambivalent, demanding, and patronizing. No, she's not ambivalent. Unconcerned, antagonistic, and impassioned. No. So your answer for 17 is B. She is undaunted by them, right? They don't scare her, worry her at all. She is fearless, but she is respectful when she's speaking to them. 18, the tone of the extract can best be described as, so, outraged and ironic. A bit, yes, was outraged and ironic. Matter of fact and sarcastic, definitely that. C, tongue-in-cheek and incredulous. Curiously respectful and antagonistic. I think B is a definite answer, right? She was very matter-of-fact in speaking to them, and she did have a sarcastic and ironic tone, but this definitely, there was no tone of outrage. There wasn't any incredulity. There wasn't any antagonism, curiosity, respect, none of those things altogether for D, right? So your answer for 18 is B. I'm seeing some comments, so let me just check that real quick before I continue. In case you have a question. Okay, asked and answered. 19, which of the following is the most plausible ending of the incident in the extract? So here now they're asking, based on what happened so far, what do you think is going to happen next? The burglars will leave the house with additional items since they spend more time there. No. Alice's mother and the maid servants will go downstairs and meet the burglars having dinner. Unlikely. Alice will call the sergeant and tell him that the men are not burglars but her friends. Ridiculous. The burglars will be so engrossed with their dinner that they will not realize that the police has arrived. Yes, 19 is D, right? And that was her intention all along. The burglars so dotish, they sit down to eat. They should just run, right? So D is the answer for 19. Which of the following is an appropriate theme for the extract? Power can be used or abused. Always take threats seriously. Conflict may be intentional or unintentional. Survival often encourages people to be resourceful. I feel I like D the best, right? In order for her to survive, and survive here is not just to live, but she wants her mother to live, and she wants them to get caught, and she was very, very resourceful, right? She was smart, and we established that in another question as well. So your answer for 20 is D. All right, so that is the two prose pieces. I hope you get at least one of them repeated tomorrow. If not, you know how to go through them, right? And just to remind you, the technique that I gave you, the steps to follow, will take less time than the whole read it twice and go through the questions and go back, right? So it'll give you time to spend on ones that you have trouble with and ones you want to come back to. Keep in mind, if you want to skip one or you're uncertain about it, just shade in your closest answer lightly enough that you could erase it if you have to, but dark enough that the computer will pick it up if you don't get time to change it. But don't leave it out or mark it on your question sheet and then go to bubble it in after. So many people make mistakes doing that, right? So moving on to poetry, my favorite. Now, unlike yesterday when I said you don't need to understand the meaning of the poem, you need to understand line by line. Now you do need to understand the meaning of the poem. And guys, you have studied 20 poems for 2 years. Some people even started these poems in Form 3. You know how to analyze a poem. And when you're doing your poetry for your English B paper 1, you need to analyze the poem just like you did those 20 poems. You read it, you figure out the lines, you figure out who the speaker is, you make notes. In fact, I would go through the poem and make notations just as you would have, well, at least I know my students, in your textbook right next to the lines, you would write all of your notes, identify devices, speaker, meanings, images, all these different things, and analyze the poem. You have enough time to do that, and it will guarantee that you answer the questions correctly. So your step one, of course, read the instructions, read the following poem carefully, simple. Then you're going to read the title. So it's called The Pond by Mervyn Morris. We know Mervyn Morris. He did some of our poems for CSEC. The Pond in West Indian Poetry, 1989. Then you're going to go through your questions. The first 3 lines of the poem serve to. So again, first 3 lines, so what you can do is your notations regarding the questions, you put on one side, one with line numbers, and your own little notes to help you understand the poem, you put on the other side, right? So you would go here to line 1, 2, and 3 and put question 1 next to it. And you can even put the word purpose or serve to, so you know what you're looking for, right? 22, what impression is created by unfathomable pool and nameless horrors? Again, underline both these words, put number 22 next to it, and you could put impression and a question mark. 23, what does bright boys kept away suggest about the boy in the second verse? So again, right, you make your notation, what does it suggest? This is the important part of it, about it, right? What does it suggest about the boy? 24, what does the poet achieve in the phrase fixed in fear? Again, all you have to do is go make your notation, put number 24 next to it. Which of the following lines signals a change in the mood of the poem? All I will do here is underline this, and when it's time, I will figure it out. Which of the following is the best explanation for the poet's repetition of pool, pool, pool? Now, a little tip, again, like I said last time, repetition, it's typically emphasis, right? We'll check to see if that's right here, but you see they have listing, reinforcing, emphasizing, and stating. It definitely can't be listing and stating because it's repetition. So it has to be BOC, right? And the pool, unfathomable pool, brooding pool. So looking at the repetition of pool when you're reading the poem, you know to pay attention to that. 27, lines 12 to 13, parts muddy, slippery, fabled are effective. So effectiveness here again, you find the lines, you underline it, put number 27, write effectiveness, and put a question mark. Which of the following figurative devices best describes the phrase brooding pool? Now, I didn't even need to read the poem, right? You know that that is personification, but we'll just leave it until you read it to be sure. Right? Brooding is a human behavior. The language of the poem can best be described as, so that's a general question you'll be able to answer at the end. I would just underline, highlight this. Now, which of the following themes, nice, so theme is explored in the poem. You should be great prose at figuring out, when I say prose, I mean professional, at figuring out what the theme is in the poem. So now you're gonna go up and analyze this poem just like you did all 20 of those poems you would have done, I'm assuming, 1,000,000 times between your school teacher, yourself, your extra lessons, everything, right? The pond. There was this pond in the village, and little boys he heard till he was sick were not allowed too near. So remember what the question asked what the first 3 lines meant, right? So we learned we're in a village, that's our setting, there's a pond, a literal pond. And little boys, he heard till he was sick. So this he here seems to be the character in the poem, right? It's not the speaker, we have a 3rd person speaker. So he heard till he was sick were not allowed too near. So little boys were not allowed to go near the pond, and he heard this till he was sick, which means people were constantly telling you in the village, little boys don't go near the pond. So just to show you how to do it, because I can, it's right here, you would answer that question right away. The first 3 lines of the poem serve to generate human conflict, create intrigue and engagement, narrate the story of the little boy, introduce a warning. Yes, it is a warning, right? 21D. Now, if you're making notes to help you understand the poem, now this is a small, short, and not very difficult poem. However, I've seen some ridiculous ones, so I would follow these steps regardless, and I'll give you the steps today so you know. So when I read that, there was this pond in the village, I will underline village, write the word setting next to it. little boys, he heard till he was sick, were not allowed to near. I would just translate that on the side here. Don't go in the pond, or boys were told don't go in the pond, right? Or even write the word warning. But we answered that question already. Unfathomable, right? So unfathomable means you can't even think of it. You can't even come it in your mind. Pool, they said. That swallowed men and animals just so. And in its depths, old people said, swarm gallywasps and nameless horrors. Bright boys kept away. I don't even know what a gallywasp is, and I feel like I don't need to in this life, so let's just forget about that, right? And you will always have poems with these weird words, don't worry about it. This whole thing is like a legend, and I would write that word on the side, legend / folklore. Lots of warnings and danger and doom and gloom about this pond, right? Like it's so dangerous, it swallowed men up, animals, whatever. Nameless horrors, right? I would underline that. And this is an important line here, underline this, bright boys kept away, right? So this is saying, and I would write it on the side, if you're smart, you're not gonna go near the pond because of all these warnings and dangers that they gave you, right? I remember a question about the repetition of the pool. So we will underline this here. You would have had it underlined already actually to answer the question. Though drawn so hard by prohibitions, let me just check the chat. Somebody said something. Gallywasps are a species of giant semi-aquatic lizard. Thank you, Darion, for that, which I'm probably going to forget in 5 minutes, but thanks, right? So a gallywasp was some scary lizard thing. Though drawn so hard by prohibitions. So that line, we all know what that means, right? I mean, you guys, you're teenagers, and they tell you to do something, you really want to do it, right? So you're drawn so hard by the prohibitions. They tell you not to do it, you want to do it. I would write that on the side as well. The small boy, fixed in fear, kept off. We are to assume that small boy here is he from up here, right? He heard till he was sick, and bright boys were supposed to keep away, but the small boy, fixed in fear, kept off. Oh, he did keep off. Till one wet, so you see, always in your poem, you're going to find a but, or, and then, and here you have a till, right? And I believe this is one of the questions, right? So something is going to change here. Till one wet summer, grass growing lush, paths muddy, slippery, right? So they kind of create an atmosphere here, give us some imagery that it's wet, grass is growing, it's muddy, it's slippery. He found himself there at the fabled edge. Fabled, of course, because the edge of this pond is the thing of stories told over time. The brooding pool was dark, sudden, escaping cloud, the sun came bright. So he's standing here at the edge of the pool, it's dark, the pond, right? Pool, they're using pool and pond interchangeably. Sudden, escaping cloud, the sun came bright. So you have the sun was behind the clouds, because remember he said it was dark, right? And the sun just peeked out, came bright, and shimmering in guilt, he saw his own face peering from the pool. So Mr. Man knew he was supposed to keep away. He knew he's bright. One day he was tempted. He went up to the pool in the darkness, but then the sun came out and showed him his own face in his reflection. This reminds me of Mirror. Remember in Mirror at the end where the lady went to keep seeing her reflection? So he comes to the pool now and he's shimmering in guilt, right? The sun kind of literally shine a light on him, and he sees his own face shimmering from the pool. And I would assume he is going to run off, right? So at this point, you know what you were looking for from the questions. You may have answered quite a few of them because of your notations. And even if you didn't answer all and you still have those 3 at the end, the notes that you made has now helped you analyze and understand this poem. A little extra step I want you to take before you go to do the questions now is kind of repeat the poem to yourself at this point, right? Make sense of it. You have a village, there's a pond, there's all this dark, dangerous folklore, fable, legends about the pond. Little boys, apparently they don't care about the girls because they didn't mention them, but little boys were warned that if you're smart, you will keep away from this pond. Our little boy here was so curious, and one day, one wet summer, he decides to go to the edge of the pond, and it's dark, mainly because the clouds are blocking the sun. And just as he was there at the edge of it, the sun peeks out from behind the clouds, shows him his face in the reflection. Good? Let's see. So 21 we said as D. 22. What impression is created by unfathomable, cool, and nameless horrors? A, fear, dread, and anger. That seems the answer, but let's check the rest. Risk, invisibility, and isolation. I don't think we have invisibility and isolation. darkness, desolation, and depth. Now we definitely have darkness and depth. I don't know about desolate, right? Then you have intrigue, mystique, and solitude. Again, here you do have intrigue and mystique, but not solitude. And also, they're not talking about the pond in general and the way it's described throughout the poem. It's these two specific phrases, unfathomable pool and nameless horrors. So your best answer is E. Fear, dread, and anger. 23. What does bright boys kept away in line 8 suggest about the boy in the second verse? He is easily influenced by the other boys. He is curious but cautious. His parents are always watching to see if he behaves. His friends are adventurous and he wants to be like that. No friends are mentioned, so it's not D. No parents, not C. You have A and B again. There was no talk about influence from other boys. So B is your answer. He is curious, which we saw, but he is cautious. 24. What does the poet achieve in the phrase fixed in fair? So I remember reading that. Personification, it's not that. Creation of a metaphor. Oh, this is a devices question, right? It's not personification, it's not metaphor. Use of an alliterative device. No, it is alliteration, right? Fixed in fair, repetition of that F sound. Development of similes, not a simile. Too easy, right? So your answer for 24, they tried to trick us by, they could have just asked what device it is, right? But 24 is C, use of an alliterative device that reinforces the crippling effect of fear. 25, which of the following lines signals a change in the mood of the poem? I talked about this. I don't even need to read them. C, till one wet summer, right? So whenever you see, they ask about change in mood, typically in a poem, you would have a but, a till, and then, right, which changes everything. 26, which of the following is the best explanation for the poet's repetition of pool? Now, as I said, C should be an answer because repetition, it's always emphasized. A and B, we're not even going to read it because it's not going to be listing or stating. Let's just check B. Reinforcing of the title by giving details about the pond. No. Emphasizing the fables told daily by the old people and children. That's it, right? All the different ways they describe the pool. Unfathomable, the pool, brooding pool, right? So 26, C. 27, lines 12 to 13. Paths, muddy, slippery, fabled edge are effective because they... So this is the little descriptions they gave in the summer that he decided to go in. Reinforce the inclination to break rules, heighten anxiety and love for adventure, evoke a sense of danger and wonder at the forbidden. I think yes. Celebrate excitement and freedom. Definitely not D or A, and then between B and C, it definitely reinforces the danger, right? There's no love for adventure. So your answer for 27 is C. Which of the following figurative devices, all right, so with devices, brooding pool, as I said, to brood is a human action, so brooding pool would be D, personification. Where we reach. The language of the poem can best be described as, so this is in general the language used throughout the poem. Formal and old-fashioned, it wasn't formal. Practical and non-standard, it was standard, so it can't be A or B. Informal and conversational, I find that it was a bit informal and conversational, you know, the way they're talking about him, he this, he that kind of thing. Just like engaging and ungrammatical, that's not true. So your answer for 29 is C. 30, which of the following themes is explored in the poem? So, disobedience and tragedy. No tragedy because nothing happened to him in the end. Confronting guilt and fears, yes. He was definitely guilty. He definitely confronted his fear. Childhood fears and disillusionment. Definitely childhood fears, but I don't feel disillusionment. Guilt and crippling consequences. No. Definitely there was guilt, but there wasn't any crippling consequences. So I would say B is your best answer. I feel like it's not the best and like it should have been a better choices, but the best answer out of the choices they gave you for 30 is B. Right? So that's it. Anything in the chat? No. Good. I hope the lack of things in the chat means that you guys are understanding and following along. Let's go on. So another poem, longer, very longer, right? Longer. So step 1, read the instructions, read the poem carefully, answer 31 to 40. Read the information about the poem. Step 2, you have the writer. So I'm going to assume it's going to be about a writer, author. And then you read in this piece, Richard Wilbur, the writer, retrieved from Poem Hunter, right? So CSEC, lazy as hell, didn't give us any further information. They just got this offline, and they in fact even put the website there. Step 3, I'm going to go through the questions. This one looks a little bit blurry. Sorry about that. 31. Stanza 1 creates an image of A. So you go to stanza 1, write 31 next to it, write the word image and put a question mark. 32, and let me just highlight image. 32, the phrase a commotion of typewriter keys is effective because. So you will go to the poem, underline this, put number 32 next to it, and write the word effective and put a question. Effectiveness next to it, right? That's what you're looking for. 33, like a chain hauled over a gunwale. A specific line, line 6, you're going to underline it. 33, and you write what does it capture next to it, right? That's what they're asking, capture. So this is a question about imagery. 34, the bird's situation is used to comment on the human condition as it. So this seems a very intense question that you have to understand the poem to understand, right? Hopefully at the end we get it. Which of the following best describes the speaker's attitude to his daughter? So I would just underline this, so when I'm reading I will note to pay attention to that, but there's no way I can note that until I read all of it. The best explanation of the function of the whole house seems to be thinking. This one you could go up and find line 13, underline it, put number 36 next to it, and write the word function, right? They're asking what is the function of it. Which of the following adjective best describes the bird in stanzas 7 to 8? So same thing, right? You would want to describe the bird 7 to 8, put something next to it. 38, which of the following is the best example of an extended metaphor? So this is something that you don't even need to read the poem to do. You could just read here and know what an extended metaphor is, right? So an extended metaphor, of course, when it's just not one phrase or line, but it's continued from more than one line. Which of the following figurative devices best describes the phrase, her life is a great cargo? Now, without going to the poem, you already know that this, to say one thing is another, and the other one, beating a smooth course for the right window, this is metaphor, right? But we'll wait till we go back and we'll check the answers to see. 40, which of the following is an example of contrast, right? So another device question. All right, that's it. So now we're going to go into the poem. Like I said, you're going to analyze it just like you analyze the question. So all of the notations you make with your questions, that should all be on this side. And now you're going to make notes on this side. In a room at the prow of the house. So from the beginning here and already from reading the questions, there are a lot of references to like ships and boats and that kind of stuff, right? The prow, of course, is the front of a boat. So her room is at the front of the house. Keep in mind, guys, every year after the exam, students call me or message me, what is this? What does this word mean? And I have to go find the poem. You can answer the majority. Maybe there might be one question if it's specifically about a word or a phrase that you didn't get without it. So don't get lost, don't get confused, and don't come out the exam stressed about, oh my God, what was that one word? What did it mean, right? I'm sure you could get by without it. Don't let it bring you down. The writer. In her writer, I'm telling you here, the prow is the front of the house, but you didn't need to know that to understand this poem. Where light breaks and the windows are tossed with linden. Linden, again, is like a kind of lime tree, right? My daughter is writing a story. So the speaker is the father, and the daughter is in her room, and it says when light breaks, right? So that's the early morning, and the windows are tossed with linden, and there are all these beautiful trees outside of the window. The daughter is writing a story. I pause in the stairwell, hearing from her shut door a commotion of typewriter keys, like a chain hauled over a gunwale. So gunwale too, another word that you didn't need to know, but I'll tell you what it is. It's like the deck of the ship kind of thing, and it's saying a chain being dragged over it. So he is giving us some imagery here of sound of what it sounds like her typing, right? And he describes it as a commotion. Right, so she's typing frantically. He paused in this, walking up the stairs, he paused to listen to her typing and describes the sound of it. Young as she is, the stuff of her life is a great cargo. and some of it heavy. I wish her a lucky passage. So this here, I'm going to assume is what they were talking about with extended metaphor, all this boat stuff, right? So he says here, the stuff of her life is a great cargo. So the way that we normally say that, and some of it heavy, you know, she have a heavy burden to bear. Her life has not been easy, right? Her life is great cargo. She has a lot to carry around, a lot of baggage, right? A lot of heavy stuff. And he says, I wish her a lucky passage. So that passage he's talking about is, you know, he wishes that she's gone through so much already. He wishes her luck as she continues in her journey, right? Passage, of course, is another word for journey when you're on a ship. But now it is she who pauses. So remember, when he says now it is she who pauses, because remember, he had paused on the step, literally. Now it is she who pauses, as if to reject my thought and its easy figure. A stillness greatened. Now that's a nice little line there. That's so cute, because he's saying she was typing in her room, that clack, 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 clack. He come up the stairs. He's listening to her type. He pauses. He's not walking anymore. And he has this thought in her mind, and although it's in his mind, she pauses her typing. So he's saying it's almost as if, you know, she heard his thoughts and she's rejecting what he thought, right? That's such a nice little thing to say, right? A stillness greatens. So the stillness greatens, it's intensified, right? She has stopped typing, and he has paused on the step, she paused in the room, in which the whole house seems to be thinking. So that's what he's saying, the silence, the sudden pause. You know when you're typing and you stop and you're wondering, thinking what to write, that's the pause he's talking about. And he's saying the whole house seems to be thinking, right? Because everything is silent. So the house here is personified. And then she is at it again with a bunched clamor of strokes, and again is silent, right? So she paused, the whole house was like it was thinking, it was silent, and she tick, clack, 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 she started bunched clamor, right? She started type again, and then again silence. I remember the dazed starling. A starling is a type of bird, right? Which was trapped in that very room 2 years ago. How we stole in, lifted a sash. Now he is describing, and they make it easy for you to figure out, he's describing his daughter as a dazed starling, right, as a bird. He's saying 2 years ago, she was this little bird trapped in that room. We stole in, so stole here means sneak, right? He stole into the room, lifted a sash, and retreated, not to affright it. So they used to be very cautious with her, very delicate, right? She's this delicate bird, fragile bird, and they used to be very careful when they went into the room. And how for a helpless hour, through the crack of the door, we watched this sleek, wild, dark, and iridescent creature batter against the brilliance. Now, how this is good poetry. This is really good poetry, right? When he says, we watched this sleek, dark, wild, dark, and iridescent creature. So because she is a bird, he's continuing this type of imagery. And that sleek, dark, wild, iridescent creature is whatever she was battling. Right? So be it depression or illness or whatever it was she was battling, her darkness, right? Her darkness is what he's describing as this creature, batter against her brilliance, drop like a glove to the hard floor or the desktop. And the weight then, pumped and bloody, for the wits to try it again, and how our spirits rose when suddenly, sure, it lifted off from a chair back, beating a smooth course for the right wind. So you have delicate bird up here, right? In her room, they're very cautious. Then she goes into a very dark period in her life, and they are scared, they worry. It dropped there, it's heavy in her room. They worry that it would, right? Try it again. And then their spirits rose. They were happy to see that suddenly, when it says it lifted off from a chair back, beating a smooth course for the right window and clearing the sill of the wood, it left, right? Whatever darkness was plaguing her, it left through the window. And they describe it as a bird flying out through the window, right? It is always a matter, my darling, of life or death, as I had forgotten. I wish what I wished you before, but harder, right? So he is just reiterating his feelings and his wishes and his hopes for his daughter in the end here, knowing that whatever she's going through is always a matter of life and that it's so serious, it's so dark, and he wishes what he's always wished for her, what he wished for her, but even more so, he wants her to be happy, to live, to thing, right? Very nice poem. Unusual, but nice. And you know, the title of the poem, The Writer, and it really has nothing to do with the child writing. It really is about her and what she is dealing with. I don't like the title. All right, stanza 1. Creates the image of a prowler peering through moss-covered front room windows, no. Broken window, bushes, and an inexperienced writer at her desk, no. Room windows covered with plants and a girl writing her story. That sounds right. boathouse. So they try to trick you up, right? Remember, it's not a boat at all. They were just using boat references. A house with bright windows and a girl writing her story. I don't feel they said anything like that. So for 31C, it's a room, create a setting first, right? An image, windows covered with plants, and a girl writing her story. 32, the phrase a commotion of typewriter keys is effective because the metallic drumming of the keys on the desk, disorder and discontent in the pace of writing, that could be the answer. Let's check the other. Systemic and steady. So you wouldn't describe something as a commotion if it was systemic and steady. Recreates the rapid and excited sound of the writer at work. This is not, commotion is not really about sound, and it's not about the writer at work, but it's the typewriter itself. So for 32B, it produces disorder and discontent, right? That's what a commotion would give. 33, like a chain hauled over a gunwale, captures the, so this is gonna have to be something about sound, right? Because we're talking about the chain dragging across and that sound imagery. So picture of the daughter, no metallic imagery, no image, no clamor the typewriter keys are making in the quiet house, right? Even if you didn't know the word clamor, quiet house here clues you into that D is the only answer that is about sound. So your answer for 33 is D. 34, the bird situation, stanzas 6 to 10, is used to comment on the human condition. So remember I was saying, you know, that deeper meaning of the poem and him using the bird analogy, bird metaphor, was really about the human condition and what she went through, right? So reinforces the notion that beauty, blood, and defeat make no, represents the theme that tenacity, fright, and failure in the natural no, underscores the idea that folly, fear, and freedom are recognized in small and no, shows the pain, struggle, and eventual success can become a universal and celebrated experience, definitely, right? Because this father is celebrating what his child has overcome, right? So I thought this was going to be a hard question, but it ended up being easy because A, B, and C ridiculously wrong. 35, which of the following best describes the speaker's attitude to his or her daughter? So this is I got the impression it was a father writing about his daughter, and you're looking at what words he would use to describe her based on what he said. So respectful and protective, yes. Observant and authoritative, no, I didn't say authoritative. He was observant, but not authoritative. Definitely not indifferent, judgmental, definitely not, right? So you would have been choosing between A and B, and there's no authority, so I would pick E. 35, E. 36, the best explanation of the function of the whole house seems to be thinking, right? So that's a nice little personification there. Reminds me of sonnet composer on Westminster Bridge when they talk about the very house seems asleep, the very city. 36, develops the idea of thinking more, no. Compares the parents' silence in their house to the keys, no. Personifies the boathouse and introduces the no. See imagery, no, it's not those things. Heightens the contrast with the typewriter in action and the quietness of thought, yes. Right, because he was saying the entire piece about it, and twice he went into it, when she stops writing, she is thinking, right? So your answer for 36 is D. This is one of those, again, that you could easily get wrong if you don't apply your literature paper to mind, your literature paper to skills to this question, right? Because the others are close, but there are key things in them that are wrong. This is it. It's heightening the contrast. It's a literary function. You see this word here? It's just like effectiveness, right? It served a function. They didn't ask what the literal meaning of it was. They didn't ask for all these little things. They're asking what was the function, and the function was to heighten the contrast, right? So that is 36. Which of the following adjectives best describe the bird in stanzas 7 and 8? So let me just, line 19 to 24. And retreated not so affrighted, and how for a helpless hour through the crack of the door we watched the sleek, wild, dark, and iridescent creature batter against the brilliant light. So this is the darkness, right? So you have sleek, angry, and dazed, dazzling, dark, and wild, unique, gray, and helpless, curious, trapped, and colorful. Ah, I was concerned, I just checked back because I was concerned about the word colorful. However, one of the words used to describe it, one of the adjectives is iridescent, right? And that's that colorful kind of line. So your answer is actually D. I see in someone in the chats, what did they say? Right, so curious, trapped, and colorful. 38, which of the following is the best example of an extended metaphor in this poem? The prow, which is compared to the house with the window covered with linen. No, those things are unrelated. The glove that represents the bird that seeks to escape. No, the glove was only mentioned once. A voyage which compares the challenges of growing up to a journey at sea with all the dangers. That I feel like it didn't go all the way there. A ship on the ocean which personifies the bird and the doting parent who wishes a safe passage. So I think your best answer is C for 38, yeah. I don't love it, but it's the best answer, right? So there's this whole voyage of the challenges that she faced, the difficulties in the journey, and then all the dangers that she faced, right? So you have the bird and you have all this stuff, assuming that it's all happening at sea. So it's this extended voyage, sea voyage type of metaphor that was carried throughout the poem. The D can't be the answer because it's too literal. This last part about the doting parent who wishes a safe passage, right? It's not that. So C is the answer for 38. I don't love this question and I don't love this answer. 39. Which of the following figurative devices best describes the phrase, her life is a great cargo? So remember I said this was a metaphor of the bat, right? Because once you say something is another, it's a metaphor, right? I'm beating a smooth course for the right window. Again, metaphor because they're saying that her darkness or her sadness is a bird. So that's 39. 40, which of the following is an example of contrast in the poem? So you have the battered bird and the silent house that waits. No, the batter, the bird and the silence, not really contrasting. Active typewriter and the much used desktop, no. The daughter who writes and the father who is non-observant, that doesn't seem a good contrast. The daughter's youth and the burden of, yes. Right? This is contrasted, definitely, right? So she is this young, delicate bird, and then you have all the challenges that she's faced is described with such heaviness and darkness, right? That was definitely a contrast. Whew. Right, 40. 2 poems, done. Hope everybody is still with me. See how much people we have in the chat. 93. All right, guys. So now at this point in the exam, you'll be fed up too, right? You did your drama, you did your poems. Check your time, take a minute, catch a breath, clear your mind, right? Because now you have these 2 long pieces of prose to read. They're usually long. Typically, again, one West Indian, one not, but they're usually quite long. And like I said, it's not simple comprehension. You do have to do analysis. Right? Now, because of the prose, you wouldn't make as many notations as we did with the poem, and you wouldn't be able to go through it and analyze it in the same way. So for this, you are going to use your questions as your guide. The questions for this is going to help you to sift out what you have to pay attention to and what is important rather than trying to read this thing over and over and understand it, right? So let's follow our steps. Step 1, read the instructions, read the following extra carefully, answer 41 to 50. Read the information that they give you about it. So it had no title, but it says adapted from Lorna Goodison. So we know Lorna Goodison as one of our poets from World of Poetry. The Dolly Funeral, right? So we all know what is a dolly, right? A doll, right? A lot of us say dolly. I don't know if that's a West Indian thing or a back in times thing, but I called my dolls dollies growing up, right? So the Dolly Funeral. So a doll funeral can help you understand. Amistad Canada 2011, right? So it's not too old when it was published and your setting is Canadian. So typically with these, you may have like a West Indian characters living in Canada, or it would just be that she publishes in Canada and the setting is West Indian. We'll find out when we read it. The questions will tell us if that's even important, right? If there is no question on setting, then who cares, right? So now we go to our next step 3, go through the question. The main purpose of the opening paragraph is to explain. So you go to the opening paragraph, you could put 41 next to it and put purpose and a question mark. 42, you see how they always have this kind of question in the beginning, like the importance of the opening. The most significant difference between the lion's household and the narrator is, so I know that I have to pay attention to the difference between the households, right? You have two households, lion's household and narrator household. 43, the description of the lion's house and family reveals primarily that the character, right? So something about the description of the house, I will also pay attention to that. 44, which of the following words best describe the different personalities of Bev and the narrator? So you have two characters here, right? You have Bev and you have narrator. We haven't read it yet, we have no idea, but we would want to pay attention to differences in their personalities. Which of the following statements best describes the relationship between the narrator and her mother? So again, another relationship here, and they're asking about it, right? What describes the relationship between narrator and mother? So that's two different things. One asks you to describe the relationship, and one is asking you the difference in their personalities. In the passage, Bev is most concerned with, right? So that's something you would have to read to understand. We would know after. 47, the narrator's daydream of a different family who would never deprive her of the opportunity to attend a dolly funeral suggests that. So this is a very detailed question. And without reading it, we know now she wanted to attend a funeral for the doll, and her family deprives her of it, and she has an opinion about that, right? So that is something we would focus on, and we will come back to that question. 48, based on the narrator's view of the lion's family, which was one of its expressions, most obviously suggests an ironical point of view. So this may be a little bit tricky, and we will focus on it when we're reading. Focus definitely on her view of the family, right? Which way she thinks about that family. I'm going to assume Bev is a lion, right? So she is from that family. In the extract, the voice of the child narrator is engaging because, oh, I like this. We always ask this. If you did World of Prose, this is something you've discussed at length with your teachers, right? What is the effectiveness of having a child narrator? Because lots of the stories in World of Prose were child narrators. Even Mockingbird, we have a child narrator, right? And we talk about this. So that should be an easy one. I'm glad they have that question. The dominant theme of the extract. So again, something we will get into when we get to the end. Right, so now we go through the paragraph, the passage. So you see how long it is. You don't want to be reading this twice and then going back in it again when you're doing your questions. So you either do your questions one time, the ones that you can, and then, or you read and then go through after. And again, use your pencil, make notations. That will stop you from getting lost, right? From reading two paragraphs and being like, shit, I wasn't paying attention, I have to come back up, right? Use your pencil. I can't remember how Bev and I became friends, but I remember at first feeling displaced by her as a leader of our neighborhood group of children at large. Now, I remember the first question had something about what was the purpose of this first thing, and this seemed like a very important piece here, right? She felt displaced by her. So that means she felt like she was important, and then this girl come and just take over that role. She became the most popular one, right? Displaced by her as leader, yeah, of our neighborhood group. Now, the only reason I'm highlighting, pay attention to this, because I remember there's a question about leader and there was a question about this first paragraph. Of our neighborhood group of children at large. In the summer holidays, she came from a family that was even bigger than mine, and up until that time, I had been the child to hold that particular distinction. I had 6 brothers, which meant people thought twice about interfering with me. So a narrator was important, you know, she was the leader of the group, she had 6 brothers, nobody messed with her, that kind of thing. And Bev came now and kind of take her place, take her role. Bev had 8 brothers. My parents had 9 children. There were 12 children in the Lion's household. So Bev kind of come and one-up in her and everything, right? You have more brothers, she's the leader, they have more children in general in their family. And when her family moved into the neighborhood, she just naturally assumed the leadership role that I had held until then. Let me see if we can answer that question one time, just to do one of them. The main purpose of the opening paragraph is to explain how Bev and the narrator became friends, differences between Bev and the narrator, how the narrator was displaced by the leader, by Bev as leader and by Bev. C. Easy, right? 41C. So you already have one down. I loved visiting the Lion's house. They lived in their own place, which made them rich in the eyes of everyone. So that their own place thing implies that it wasn't rented, right? They owned their house. The first time I visited their house, I remember wishing that I lived there. So already I would jot down little words, because I remember they talk about, you know, how she feels about them. Envy, right? She has envy and admiration for them. Unlike my house, where somebody was always correcting you for sitting down bad or common behavior, the lions were a marvelously free and uninhibited family. So the narrator feels like her house has a set of rules, right? You can't sit down a certain way, you can't behave a certain way. But she felt like the lions were free and uninhibited. They could behave how they want. They yelled at each other, screamed with laughter, and used language that would send my mother for the brown soap to scour out somebody's mouth, right? So definitely the Lions family, Lions parents, were not as strict as the narrator's parents, and she seems to envy that. Who wouldn't, right? The first time I witnessed Mrs. Lyons trying to discipline Vavan, the baby of the family, I was truly astonished. Vavan did some really dreadful thing. Mrs. Lyons screamed at him to behave. He replied, "Wave." I have no idea how to pronounce that. But it's obviously some sort of patois, right? She tried to grab him. He stuck out his tongue at her, dropped to his belly, wriggled out of the bed, and from his dark hideout shouted at her. She yelled that she was going to tear his backside and seize the broom. She must have seen me staring at her because she advised me to go outside and play in the yard. Then they resumed the duel. He with the foul mouth and she with the broomstick. So you have this comical, almost comical, I should say, description, incident, right? And a little story about the mother trying to discipline the son, and he mouth hot and he cussing and he saying all kind of things to her. And she threatening him with the broom, right? So we are to assume that this kind of exchange would never happen in the narrator's house because of, that respect. She was afraid of her mother. She would never have talked back. I'm going to check the chat because I'm hoping somebody tell me what's the meaning of that. Nope, didn't. If any of you guys from the other islands recognize this word, or whichever patois or dialect it comes from, I would love to know what it means and where it's from. All sorts of wonderful things happened at the Lion's house. Periodic fights would break out between the brothers, who would fight each other fiercely until their mother appeared and sometimes doused them with a goblet of cold water. My friend Bev had all sorts of lovely toys and games to play with, but mostly she had a wonderful talent for organizing great events. So we get another list of little things that she admired about them here, and the toys, different of the toys that she liked, and you don't get an idea of tension in their relationship, right? It really is her friend, because she says, all sorts of lovely toys. These could range from the literal low-level act of getting a group of children together to go and tease Rose, who lives several streets away, to organizing dolls, tea parties, weddings, and pregnancies, to the dolly funeral. So Miss Bev is a little party planner, right? She's organizing all kinds of things for them to do. She's a good leader. She has all these events, and it looks like a lot of their play has to do with the dolls, right? So you have doll tea party, wedding, pregnancy, and this dolly funeral, which is the subject of our story today. My mother was not consistent when it came to allowing me to play at other people's houses. Oh, we know this well, right? One day mother say yes, next day she say no, and then they say, but you told me yes last time, and then she'll say, no, well, I'm telling you no now, right? That's what she mean about the inconsistency. Her mother was not consistent when it came to allowing her to play. Some days, for no reason, she would say, don't leave the house today. Sometimes you should let people along to see you. So her mother says she going by the friend too much, stay inside, let people miss you a little bit. The day of the funeral was one of those days. I got dressed to walk over to Bev's house, and as I approached my mother to ask her permission, inform, so you like that little backslash there, right? She asked her permission / inform her where I was going. She said, don't leave the house, etc. I pleaded with her. I inquired of her if she did not remember me telling her all about the arrangements for the funeral, how important it was that I go because I was going to read from the Bible, and could she just please do, I beg you, Mama, make me go. My mother started that sewing machine by slapping the rim of the handle with her palm and proceeded to pump the broad flat pedal at a fierce rate. So the mother just started sewing immediately. That action, read by any fool, clearly meant, don't say anymore, right? So her mother is a no-nonsense person. She didn't care if it had dolly funeral or what, you're not going. And she had a reason. She would have let you go yesterday or tomorrow, but today you're not going, right? And she also not getting in any long discussion. So it's definitely contrasted against the lion's mother, who would have the back and forth and argument and running on children. With her children, the narrator's mother started sewing, and that was the end of that. You know she said no, and you also know to bring it up or talk about it anymore. So very, very different households. So I subsided in a corner of the veranda and wept. Oh, I remember this feeling so well as a child, right? When they tell you can't do something and you just want to go in a hole and cry. As with each time I felt I had been dealt an injustice by my parents. I imagined that I was not their child, that I had been the victim of a careless hospital blunder, that my real parents were out there somewhere in Kingston. Nice people who would never deprive me of the right to attend a Dolly funeral. Oh, this is funny and cute at the same time, right? Nice people, she says. So she says she's so vexed with her mother. She imagined that that's not even her mother, and she was switched at birth, right? And her real family would definitely let her go to the Dolly funeral. As the time of the funeral approached, Bev came over to inquire why I was not present at the site and saw me sobbing on the veranda. I told her what my mother had said. She said, kissing her teeth. So Bev come by the window to ask her why she's not going, right? Bev tell her, sure, just teeth out. And I, for the first time in my life, just did that. I said, oh no, I sneaked out of the yard without my mother's permission. Oh Lord, she's giving me anxiety. So she listened to her friend disobey her mother and sneak out the house to go to the Dolly funeral. Unfortunately, we don't know what happened next. I assume she has cut when she come back home, but she sneak out, right? So Bev gave her this kind of boldness that she didn't have before. We already answered 41. We are on to 42. The most significant difference between the Lyons household and the narrator is the number of men who live there. No, vast freedom exercised by members in the Lyons household. Higher social and economic class that the narrator belonged to. Effective disciplinary measures undertaken in the Lyons home. These answers are quite close, but I think your best answer is B, right? So that encompasses the most significance, right? They just generally had more freedoms at the Lyons household, right? Because Lyons discipline was not effective. They didn't talk too much about this part, and definitely not E. So B for 42. 43, the description of the Lyons house and family reveals primarily that the narrator is fiercely protective of her parents and her family, Has an observant, perceptive, and precocious personality, yes, right? She was very observant, perceptive, and precocious. Is no more than a naive, underexposed adolescent, no. Has feelings of jealousy and anger towards her friend, no. Remember, I made sure to point out that, right? She didn't have this. She definitely liked what they have, envy, they liked it, but there was no jealousy and anger. So B is your best answer for 43, right? She's observant, perceptive, and precocious. 44. Which of the following words best describe the different personalities of Bev and the narrator, respectively? So the first word has to describe Bev, and the second word has to describe the narrator. So you have generous and fearful, no. Excitable and organized, no. Strong-willed and obedient, yes. Level-headed and determined, this is it, C. Right, Bev is very strong-willed, bossy, do what you want, tell everybody else what to do as well, and the narrator is obedient to her mom, up until the end, right? But throughout the whole thing, she described herself as obedient. 45, which of the following statements best describe the relationship between the narrator and her mother? So we see that interaction in the end, especially with them, right? So let's see. They hate each other since both are strong and willful. No, one didn't get hate. The narrator feels a strong sense of duty and responsibility for her mother. No. The narrator resents her mother's inconsistency. Yes. And disciplinary methods. Yes. Let's just check D. They are ashamed of each other for different. No, they didn't talk about shame. So C, right? She resents her mother's inconsistency and disciplinary methods. In the passage, Bev is most concerned with emphasizing wealth and values. No. Minimizing importance of parental authority. Yes. Maintaining the friendship she has and sustaining her leadership among the children. I feel like D is your best answer, right? She was very clear about being the leader. She's planning events. She's making you come. She's a very much a little bossy pants. 47, the narrator's daydream of a different family who would never deprive her of the opportunity to attend the Dolly funeral suggests that narrator is critical of her parents and thinks they are unreasonable. Yes. Writer is unaware of complex issues. No. Protagonist is unhappy, unimaginative child, more suitable, richer family. No. Antagonist feels restricted after losing the freedom she had grown to expect. No, she had not grown to expect it, right? So this one, I find the answers a little close, a little bit tricky, but your best answer for 47 is A, right? She's critical of her parents and thinks they are unreasonable. I'm just checking the chat. The term that you could not pronounce, I think, I know what it is. Imagine a Jamaican trying to say, go away from here. Oh, but smushing the words together. That makes sense. Thank you, Avinash. It is not another language. It's just the words smushed together. Thank you. 48. Based on the narrative's view of the lion's family, which of the following expressions most obviously suggest an ironical point of view? So remember I explained irony before, where it's not what you expect, it's almost the opposite, right? So you have A, the lions were marvelously free, uninhibited people. She did say that about them, but that wasn't ironic. All sorts of wonderful things happen at the lion's house. That is ironic because she said wonderful things and all the things she describes is people getting licks and quarreling and fighting and yelling, right? See, that action read by any fool clearly meant don't say anymore. That's not ironic. I sneaked out the yard without my mother's permission, not ironic, right? So this is what is ironic. You would expect when she described those things, she wouldn't describe them as wonderful, but she does, right? Which is the opposite of what you wanted, which makes it irony. 49. In the extract, the voice of the child narrator is engaging because it's colloquial, using dialect that highlights the cultural extent of the narrative. That is correct. Let's just check the others. Detached, no. Impersonal and maintaining, no. So just these first words are telling me that these are wrong, right? Confessional, agonizing over sinful acts, no. Right? It's this. Right? Colloquial, using dialect that highlights the cultural context of the narrative. What they're saying here, and I want you to understand in case they have something else with a similar question, that child narrator is not telling the story from an adult perspective, and which means they're also not giving you the whole story in the standard, proper storytelling narrative style. She's giving it to you raw. You're getting the experience as she had it, using the words that came to her mind, the things that she would say, right? So just like the word that I was asking about, like they go away from here, right? So it's colloquial, it's using dialect that highlights the cultural context. The cultural context, of course, is that they are West Indian, a West Indian family, right? So cultural context of a narrative. So the answer for 49 is E. 50. The dominant theme of the extract can best be stated as consequence of indecision. No, there wasn't any indecision. Age and reason are powerful motivators influencing the actions of adults. No, because they really didn't discuss the actions of adults and give reason for it. Parental love and authority implies harsh discipline and lack of concern for their children. No. Growing up is challenging and survival may require trickery, adjustment, and risk. D. Very detailed themes they give you here, but this is definitely a theme, right? Challenging growing up, and in order to survive, you might have to trick your parents, adjust to certain things, and take some risks, if you so choose. Right? So I hope that one repeats. If not, I hope you learned something about how to do the question. Last one, guys. Step 1, read the instructions. Read the following extra carefully and answer items 51 to 60. I apologize for this little part being blurry. I hope when I read it, it helps to clear it up. Step 2, read the information adapted from Valerie Matsumoto, Two Deserts. In The Woman That I Am, Literature and Culture, Contemporary Women of Color, St. Martin's Press, right? 1994. So we have a kind of idea what's going on. Let's go to the questions. I hope you guys saw with that earlier one, and I think also far, for the most part, maybe just for one question, I had to look back. But because I knew the questions beforehand, and while I was reading, I was able to focus on what's important, and you will have annotations to help you even further. When I was doing the question, there was no reason to keep going back and forth into the passage, right? And we knew the answers right away because we were looking for it already because you read the questions first. So I hope that helps you to understand why I asked you to take this step of going through the questions before you read the passage. 51. The expression, her eyes were fragile lilac glass above the white smile, reveals that Matty is. So you look out for this line, you go underline it, and put 51 next to it, and you can even write what does it reveal about Matty. How does the desert landscape function in the extract? So this is a question about setting and the function of setting, right? So this is going to require some analysis, and we will be very careful with that, but we will pay attention to desert landscape descriptions when we read the passage. 53, which of the following are most likely reasons the writer chooses to make Matty adept at growing plants? So simple, right? Why she was adept at growing plants. 54, what does the writer suggest when Emiko delicately edged the cotton fabric away from Roy's damp, restless fingers? So find line 23, put number 54 next to it and write the words. What does it suggest? 55, the writer uses the wilting zinnias and the new weeds in the backyard to suggest that Matty is. All right, so a lot of suggestions. So 55 next to line 28, Roy and Matty's view of the garden in Roy viewed Emily, my dear, suggests that this is a metaphor which comments on the, so they're asking about the effectiveness of this metaphor, right? And for my students, especially, you know that in discussing any device, your last step is always to comment on the effectiveness of it, so you would know what you're looking for here. 57, what figurative device is used in the expression eyes as hard as a gate? We already know this is a simile, right? Because of this. We'll double check it. 58, what tone does Emiko use in explaining the history of her name to Roy? So I will pay attention to this. Whenever the history of the name is being described, we're going to pay attention to tone. We don't know where in the passage that is. 59, the major theme arising from the interaction between Emiko and Roy is fear, failure. So we're looking for theme, right? When we read it, we'll get into it. What attitude and values does Emiko constantly demonstrate? So attitude and values of Emiko. Good, so we have two characters, it seems, Emiko and Matty. And we are going to pay attention to description, setting, and attitude. There's a lot about attitude, mood, tone, that type of thing, right? So let's get into it. Home stretch. Emiko had finished weeding the front border and was about to go inside to escape the heat when she saw the new neighbor woman plodding across the sand toward her. So we already established here now a little bit of setting, right? In the desert, it's hot, living where she is. The relationship between the two of them, they're neighbors, and Matty, I'm assuming, is this new woman, is new to the neighborhood, right? A cotton shift could not conceal her thinness. Shift is a type of simple dress, right? A cotton shift could not conceal her thinness, nor a straw hat her tousled gray curls. So she's older and thin. Her eyes were fragile lilac glass above the white smile. So if you remember that question, the expression, her eyes were fragile lilac glass above the white smile, delicate and friendly, right? Because she's smiling, and fragile could be replaced with delicate. For 51, C. Hello, I'm Matty Barnes. I just thought I'd come over and introduce myself while Roy is finishing up. They talked about adjusting to desert life, and Emiko learned that Matty's husband, Roy, had recently retired. So this adjusting to, living in the desert, what it's like. Roy, I'm going to assume, is Matty's husband, so she came to introduce herself to Emiko. We decided to move here because the doctor said it'd be better for my lungs, Matty explained, wiping her brow. Within a few weeks after their arrival, the Barneses had settled into a routine. Roy making daily trips to the local store and the roadside cafe, Matty tending her garden and walking to church once a week with Emiko and her daughter, Jenny. So we get the impression Matty and Roy are kind of an older couple with grey hair, the church, they walk in, just go in the morning in the shop, get something, tending garden, right? They're describing their lifestyle. And we learn also that Emiko has a daughter, Jenny. One day, while Emiko was engrossed in pinning a dress pattern for Jenny, she suddenly heard it tapping on the screen, like the scrambling of a large beetle. She half turned and felt a jolt of alarm at the sight of a grinning gargoyle hunched before the glass, hands splayed open on either side of his face, the caricature of a boy peering covetously into a toy store. So she's pinning a dress means before she sew it, she's putting pins in to know where she has to stitch it, right? For her daughter Jenny, and somebody scared the crap out of her by pressing their face up against the window, right? Hey there, I caught you daydreaming, he chortled. Looks like you need some company to wake you up. I'm not daydreaming. I'm trying to figure out how to make a 2.5-yard dress out of 2 yards, she said. Jenny is growing so fast, I can hardly keep up with her. Roy walked, okay, so we learn now that the person by the window is Roy, right? Matty's husband. Roy walked into the house unbidden, confident of a welcome, and drew a chair up to the table. He fingered the bright cotton pattern spread over the table and gazed at it. So Mr. Man, come inside the house. bold-facedly come inside the lady house, pull up a chair, and start to touch the cloth, right? And gaze at Emiko, his head cocked to one side. Emiko delicately edged the cotton fabric away from Roy's damp, restless fingers, right? So she pulled away her fabric. I haven't seen Matty outside this week. How is she feeling? So Emiko brings the conversation to Matty one time. Oh, about the same, right? So remember that little mention of the lungs and they move in here, and then this question gives the impression that Matty may be ill. But I remember there being a question about that. Oh, about the same, he said, his irritation subsiding into brave resignation. She has her good days and her bad days. The doctor told her to stay in bed for a while and take it easy. It must be hard on Matty having to stay indoors, Emiko said, thinking of her peering out through the pale curtains at the wilting zinnias and the new weeds in the backyard. So Emiko has noticed that the flowers that Matty had taken good care of when she first came, as she's ill and she's in bed, that they are wilting and there are weeds forming in the garden, right? Roy viewed the garden as the site of onerous labor. So Matty enjoyed gardening, whereas you have Roy, who thinks is chore, right? He doesn't really want to do it. To Matty, it was the true world of the heart, with no room for ungentle or impatient hands. It was a place of deeply sown hopes, lovingly nurtured, and its colors were the colors of unspoken dreams. So the garden and gardening in itself had great meaning to Matty. Plants, Roy threw up his hands. That's not for me, Emily dear. She stiffened as he repeated the name, savoring the syllables. So unusual here that he has called Emiko Emily. Emily, yes, I like the sound of that. Emily, this man obnoxious, eh? My name is Emiko, she said quietly, her eyes as hard as a gate. A gate, I'm assuming, is a type of stone. I was named after my grandmother, who was beautiful and loved to swim. When she emerged from the sea, her long black hair would glitter white with salt. I never met her, but she was beautiful and she would laugh when she rose from the waters. My name is Emiko, Emmy for short. So Emiko corrects him immediately, gives a story, and you see her pride in her name, right? Her joy. I remember there's a question about this in describing where she got her name from, and she's very firm with him. My name is Emiko, Emmy for short, right? Don't call me Emily. But Emily is such a pretty name, Roy protested. It fits you. It's not my name, she said, swallowing a hard knot of anger. I don't like to be called Emily, right? So Roy is not a very nice guy. So we answered 51 already. We are at 52. How does the desert landscape function in the extract? It helps readers to understand protagonists and antagonists, no. It assists readers in understanding the thematic concerns, no. It mirrors conflict between characters and within their environment, yes. It presents a physical environment which contrasts the character's personality. This function of setting is very important, right? It mirrors conflict between the characters. A desert is a very unforgiving, conflicted, harsh environment. By having a setting like that, it's a good backdrop, a good landscape to have this conflict between these two characters, right? That's why they're saying it mirrors the conflict between the characters and within their environment, right? So if you don't understand that, didn't understand that, I could see you put in B, which would not be the answer, but it would be a guess if you did, but the answer is C, right? So look out for questions about the function of setting and know that you're looking for something like this, something about giving a backdrop to the conflict, something about the character, that type of thing, right? The setting is very important. 53. Which of the following are most likely reasons the writer chooses to make Matty adept at growing plants? Demonstrate that she is attuned to the world around her, definitely, right? Because look at how lovely she described it and felt about nature. Reveals the contrasting personalities of the married couple, yes, right? Because they use the gardening to show how different Roy and Matty are. Highlights that she's overwhelmed by domestic chores, yes, because they also use the gardening to show us that now that she is ill, she can't continue it. So your answer is D, 1, 2, and 3. 54. What does the writer suggest when Emiko delicately edged the cotton fabric away from Roy's damp, restless fingers? Roy is impatient, so it can't suggest something about Roy because Emiko did the action, right? So you know already that eliminates A and C, right? Because they have Roy and they have Roy here. So let's just look at B and D, right? The action is taken by Emiko. Emiko is tactful and does not like Roy. It does suggest that. Emiko is scornful and does not want the cloth to get soiled.
I feel like it suggests both of those things, but B is the best answer, right? She didn't really go so much into scorn and it being so. She just don't like him, and she, you know, she slowly edged away from him. It does show her tact. She didn't grab it or say, don't touch that. 55. The writer uses the wilting zinnias and the new wheat in the backyard to suggest that Mattie is ill and perhaps dying, yes. Homesick, no. Indifferent in her feelings, Roy, no. Busy and too tired to care for the garden. Now, I can see you slipping up and putting D, but remember, she's not busy, she's sick. So your answer for 55 is E. Roy and Mattie's views of the garden, in Roy, right? Remember, they describe how Roy saw the garden and how Emily saw the garden. Suggest that it is a metaphor which comments on the couple's unfulfilled dream, no. Couple's different approaches to life, yes. Two sometimes unspoken challenges, inadequate solutions, no. Spouses living, loving romance and strong union, no. Right, your answer is B. The metaphor represents or comments on or highlights that each of them has a different approach to life. The way that Roy sees the garden is the way that Roy sees life. The way that Mattie sees the garden is the way that Mattie sees life. Right, so B for 56, the effectiveness of the metaphor. 57, we already said, is a simile, right? Simile is the use of like or as to compare two things. Her eyes are as hard as a key. 58, what tone does Emiko use? Oh my God, I call her Emily. What tone does Emiko use in explaining the history of her name to Roy? So we know already that it's not going to be a good tone, right? Angry and meditative, she's not meditative. Sarcastic and paranoid, she's not paranoid. Assertive and indignant, she is. Nostalgic and unemotional, no. So easy, right? C. She's very assertive and strong in what she's saying, and she is indignant, right? She's very, almost rude to a point, right? The way she's saying it, because she's pissed. I'm just going to check the chat here real quick. What was the answer for 54 is B. 59, the major theme arising from the interaction between Emiko and Roy is fear of failure, no. Personal identity, I feel like that was there. Quest for knowledge and cultural confrontation. B is your best answer. Cultural confrontation is implied because I almost get the impression from Emiko, that name Emiko, that they are definitely of different cultures, but the more clear thing and the more evidence of Emiko giving that whole definition of her name as well, which is a big part of the interaction, is personal identity. Emiko's personal identity is rooted in her name, right? So the conversation is very much about that. 60, our last one. What attitude and value does Emiko consistently demonstrate? Disrespect for religious tradition, no. Respect for her personal history and her physical and spiritual worlds, yes. Resentful fulfillment for her maternal, no. Responsibility for the physical environment and triumphant, no. B, right? Respect for personal history and her physical and spiritual worlds. Right, so B is your answer for number 60, and that is the end of the exam. I really hope you guys get some of these repeated tomorrow. So that's it, guys. I hope you got some good tips. I hope you will remember the steps to follow. And I hope in the exam, you know, some people, I teach you all of this, you practice it, whatever your teachers taught you in school, and then you go in the exam, you just panic and do what you normally do and just start reading the passage and then go to the questions. But as you saw, looking at the question first really helps you to not have to go back and forth into the passage, and you get a good understanding of what to focus on. Because when you're reading the pieces and you don't know what to focus on, your mind is telling you, oh my God, memorize everything, understand everything, focus on everything, right? So doing the questions first really helps with that. I hope somebody is asking, number 56 was B. So I hope that helped. I wish you guys the best of luck tomorrow. I am so sad you don't get to write your essays, but I'm sure you're happy about that. Give it a good effort, getting them to sleep, and somebody's in the background. Oh yeah, that's my little good luck message in my terrible handwriting. Yes, you guys didn't all tell me today where you're from, so if you didn't yet, please send me a little message in the chat. I'll save it and keep it forever as my first 2 very huge regional crash courses. I hope to do more of these. I hope to see some of you guys in my communication studies class. All the best to you for CSEC. Please stay safe, wear your mask, don't touch nobody, and good luck. All the best. And I hope to those of you doing CAPE, good luck with that. If you have other plans, I hope that the whole world gets its shit together real quick so you could move on with your life. But in the meantime, have fun and do your best. And thank you so much for logging in and trusting me to give you advice on English and Lit, my two favorite things. All right, take care and all the best. I'm going to leave it open. You can leave when you are ready and you can continue to send me messages in the chat. If you want the recording, yesterday I emailed as many people as I could. If you sent me an email, my email is lumostt, just like the passcode, @gmail.com. If you send me an email, I can send you the answer sheet and the paper that I used and the recording of this if you want it. If you have any friends who wanted to log in and they couldn't, I will post it on social media. And again, they can email me and ask for it. All right, take care. Bye.